Chapter 11. Case closed. Case closed? Already? That can't be right. A few days later, and we hadn't had any progress locating our trio. Things had gone quiet, and though we had a list of people we were watching, we weren't even sure if anyone on that list was the next target. It wasn't an entirely unproductive period. For instance, we had compiled a short list of people who had passed away in the last few months from natural causes that might not be natural after all. Not just in Cerna, but also New Albion, Afra. We had no idea if there was a connection there, but couldn't rule it out. Winter and Reuben also circled back with the people in Cerna that Leon had reportedly attacked, though none of them had much to add that we didn't already know. Reuben's sheer stubbornness had led him to a tiny amount of personal information about Leon, though it was the only member of the trio we'd tracked down any information for. The amount of digging he did to find a single archived personal journey from a young man for whom there didn't seem to be any other records. I still didn't know how he'd stumbled across it. But from there, he was able to dig up an old profile picture. Years old. It did very much resemble the Rook I'd met, though. The journal entry made mention of being a low-level infantry. Yep. Same kind of thing that happened with Rory. Though he was definitely not in infantry anymore. That by itself seemed to confirm that something had been done to him. If only we could find them and ask. There had been a few people who had reported seeing one or more of the trio around Esper hangouts, but no solid leads beyond that. It was frustrating. I half flopped on the desk in front of me, watching Reuben and Winter pore over maps for the 20th time as they tried to work out, based on where the kids had been spotted, where they might be hiding.
Have we considered that the kids might be holed up in the underground?
Another secret Esper hangout?
No, it's a series of catacombs beneath the city. Beneath most cities, though it's not common knowledge. Parts of it are Arraean in origin, and have some of the same attributes as Arraean ruins, which means they're dangerous and can react badly to Psi. We have most of the entrances blocked off, but every so often someone makes it down there.
I'm sorry. The city has what underneath it?
I can give you more information about it later, but the point is that it could make a good hiding place for someone unworried about triggering some sort of horrific security system. Which shouldn't be any Esper who has spent more than 5 minutes down there.
I'm sorry. What? Arraean catacombs? Are there people studying them? What are they exactly? I mean, what's their purpose? You said they're under most cities? How big are they?
What have I done? Later, Morgan. I promise. A long, detailed discussion. Just not right now.
Aw, but Nerd Morgan's my favorite. Fine. I can't believe you're going to drop that on me and not give me more details. Leaning back in my seat, I released a strangled sigh. I mean, I understood, but still. I know you two dismissed my earlier offer to look for the trio, but I think we're at a dead end with manual searching. I should just give it a try.
I appreciate the offer, but, like I said before, trying to search the city using Psi isn't as easy as you think. It's a big city, and even you would have to go through it bit by bit, looking through tens of thousands of people, for 3 specific ones. Doing searches like that without getting overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information you'd be receiving is a pretty specific skill set, even in a place like Endgame. And doing a grid search where you keep your Psi localized to a small area to avoid some kind of sensory overload is going to take a lot of time and will also exhaust you.
Yeah, but we're talking about 3 people who should stand out in a sea of Psi signatures that are not a Rook, King, and Knight. I still think that if I can get a broad view of the city with my sphere, I'd be able to identify their Psi pretty easily.
Is something like that even possible? No other Esper we've worked with searches like that. Winter is right about that, though I suppose I have to admit you have a knack for turning what we think we know about Espers on its head. Yeah, it's her knack for doing that which caught Magnus Ulrich's recent attention, isn't it? Her knack for doing it and inability to question whether it's a good idea. Also true. Your ability to push the limits of what we understand Psi to be able to do doesn't necessarily work in your favor every time you do it.
But it works in the favor of this case, which is currently at a standstill, right?
Again, I worry you might find the sensory information overwhelming. What you're talking about could put you under a lot of mental strain.
One of our trio is a king rank. If I'm just blocking out everything but psi signatures, I should be able to spot that quickly, even in a large population.
Can you block out everything but Psi signatures? Because that's the part I'm concerned about. You're not talking about homing in on a location, but a specific attribute people have. I'm not sure that's feasible.
Look, I'm not worried about whether it's possible. If it is, it is. And if it isn't, it isn't. And I can't imagine that looking for people will overwhelm me more than literally anything else I've done the last few weeks. My biggest worry is that they may notice I'm looking for them. They noticed me right away last time. If I find them, we may not have much time to get to where they are. They do have a night, after all.
Oh, there's a way bigger flaw that hasn't even occurred to either of you. The last couple of times you expanded your sphere looking for someone, you teleported right into their lab.
The lab thing only happened once, thank you.
My point is that we cannot have you accidentally transport yourself to them while looking. Not this time.
In my defense, I'd never used my skills that way before in both situations. And I am getting better at controlling things.
That's not good enough, Morgan. No one is going to let you do this until we know it's safe.
Alright. Why don't I practice in a safe location? It'll also help us test how overwhelming it all is for me, and if what I want to try is even possible.
I'd like to be present for this practicing. It's not something you should be doing alone, just in case it doesn't go as you hope.
Fair. I'm fine with that.
In that case, we can at least test your idea out and decide after if it's safe to do on a larger scale. I guess that's a suitable compromise.
Finally! I wasn't sure it would work either, but I wanted to at least do something besides sit around. I had never been in the training facility at the office before, but that was where we relocated to. Reuben and Winter weren't able to offer any practical help, so they worked on other things while I tried to figure out this technique. We got occasional curious onlookers, but Winter chased most of them out to let me focus. There's always those curious onlookers when you go to train. The first order of business was to confirm that my idea would work at all. The answer to that one was definitely yes, though it wasn't as easy as I first imagined, particularly ignoring all information but psi signatures. I did manage it after several failed attempts, and I was able to pinpoint Reuben's location elsewhere in the building based on the fact his psi was now a warm gold instead of the usual green. Gold, eh? So, I mean, infantry is yellow. So is he infantry now, or is he like in between infantry and the next thing? We had already confirmed his ascension into the infantry classification. Okay, so there was no surprises there when I told him how I found him. Winter, on the other hand, he was virtually invisible when using this method due to his complete lack of psi. We paused to discuss that for a little while.
Well, nanite rejection is uncommon enough that it shouldn't matter much anyway. It does make sense this is a limitation of this technique.
It's not all that useful for locating anyone who doesn't have a form of psi that stands out either. I wouldn't be able to pick out anyone specific from a crowd of normal individuals either. They're just a sea of green.
As far as Esper's search strategies, though, I suppose it still has uses. Would be nice if it wasn't reliant on an ability that appears it might be specific to you.
We don't know that for sure.
Well, it doesn't matter right now anyway. The important thing is that we've confirmed you can find people with this sort of large-scale search method. But we need to work on why the previous accidental teleportation happened before, so you can avoid it this time.
I may just need to work on not getting overly emotional when stressed.
It's going to take more than a day of training to learn to keep a cool head during emergencies.
Yes, but this isn't an emergency either. And I don't think being emotional is the only contributing factor.
I hope we can get a handle on it then.
Well, that is the point of practice. Even if we were rushing it a bit. For the time being, I would work on that alone too. Teleporting was another skill a little beyond their expertise. I moved away and shut my eyes, trying to ignore their presence and the furtive glances Reuben was casting my way as I attempted to create a sort of mental list of steps to follow. After doing that, the only thing left was to try to follow through. Okay, so she's doing what, oh gosh, I've forgotten their name now. Oh, I feel so bad. Our Esper friend from Quill's Root. I've completely just blanked on their name. But anyway, they told Morgan, like, it helps sometimes to, like, know what exactly goes into a skill. So that way you're less likely to accidentally do it. Because you're like, okay, I know what goes into it now. Man, it bugs me that I can't remember their name. Darn it. First, I cage a location on the other side of the room, then imagine that warped sense of space and the pull this form of teleportation always created. And then I immediately launched myself face first into a wall by means of a micro wormhole. Ouch.
Morgan!
He darted across the room and was at my side in a second, pulling my hands away from my face so he could examine it. I tried to not laugh at the look of absolute worry on his face.
Are you alright? Please warn me next time you do that. I don't want this practice session to result in any injuries.
I don't know how you intend to stop me the next time I teleport myself face first into something. Granted, you do make a good landing cushion, but I don't think I can teleport myself to your lap every single time.
As much as I wouldn't mind catching you as many times as it takes. Probably not. Hey, you two. Cute as this little interaction is, we might have a slight problem. What? What's going on? Check your messages. We have an emergency meeting. Ugh. Yeah, I see it. Let's go.
Well, Reuben's like, I hate to cut the flirting short, but, we're being summoned. They rushed out of the training room, leaving me to follow. But I was just a consultant, so I wasn't invited to whatever this meeting was. Or so I thought. When he saw me out in the hall, Phil motioned me into their deployment room with the others. I found a place along the back wall, managing to squeeze myself in with only a few sidelong looks. Reuben and Winter were up at the front, close to where Phil took position as he began speaking.
Sorry for the short notice, everyone. The situation is developing, and we're still getting details from the response teams on exactly what happened. This one is ours, though, as the culprits appear to all be Espers. 6 of them, engaged in a very public confrontation. Based on surveillance, we've confirmed one of the 6 to be one of the young men from the Anon case Detective Kellner and Ashton are working with Miss Leone on.
It's weird that a public confrontation with 6 Espers is not being handled by Endgame. I would think they'd be on that right away. Interesting. Oh no.
We don't know what caused the confrontation or who the other Espers are. All 6 fled the area before any agents were on the scene.
Okay, so they've already dispersed. As I listened, I was staring at the screen behind him where there was footage of emergency vehicles scattered around a damaged street. It looked like pure chaos.
Right now they're reporting 15 civilians with minor injuries and, as you see behind me, extensive public damage. Endgame has been notified. Their cleanup teams will be arriving soon. Sorry, Reuben, Winter. But it looks like your case is going to be elevated at this rate. Get your information organized. We're most likely going to be turning it all over to an Endgame investigation unit by the end of the day. But you're still on this case until they take it away from us. So I also need you to get down there and start talking to witnesses.
So our case may be wrapping up because it's being taken over. Ugh. Trouble.
The scene may be too chaotic to get much of a psychometric reading on, but let's see if our resident consultant can come through for us one more time. I want to know where those kids ran off to before Endgame gets here if possible. And more than that, I want to know who the hell they keep clashing with. This isn't the first time, and I want an ID on the other 3 involved if we can get it. Understood.
I tuned Phil out at that point, body buzzing with sudden anxiety-fueled adrenaline. Did that mean the whole thing was over? The whole point until now was to show that Endgame didn't always have to get involved in cases like this, that it was useful to have ranked Espers available to prevent this sort of thing. Magnus was just telling us the dangers of them getting involved. And now we'd failed. It all blew up in a very public way before we could do anything. With Phil barking orders to other teams and everyone getting ready to mobilize, I slipped out on my own to try to quiet my nerves while I had time. The main office was empty, so I found my way to Reuben's desk, chewing my lower lip as I waited for them to be dismissed. Emotional, previous search strategy on hold. Flexible, check with Reuben about searching before we left. Or confident, I need to... Man, these are all 3 of my... all 3 of my traits! I can't just, dismiss anything out of hand. I think the emotional response is the least helpful. I mean, these are both about searching. And I feel it would be better to check with Reuben, because he worries. We've had enough lectures at this point about just doing things. So, you know what? We can take some feedback and apply it, right? So let's do that. I should check with Reuben about searching for the trio before we left the office, because I could do it just as well from here, and it might save us some time. Going to the scene felt like a waste if finding the trio was the main priority. I waited where I was, mulling it over for several minutes before the agents started filing back into the main office. Reuben and Winter made a beeline for their desk area when they saw me there.
Sorry about that. You alright? I saw you slip out earlier.
I'm fine. I just needed to be somewhere quiet. And I didn't think the rest of that meeting was really for me.
Something's bothering you.
Yeah. A lot. Turning the case over to Endgame. It's like writing off everything I've done for the last few weeks. I'm not okay with that. I mean, I know we may not have a choice, but... Look, I think I should search for our trio before we leave. I could find them now, but we may lose that chance if I don't try. Reuben paused in the middle of pulling on his jacket and released a soft sigh, running a hand over his face.
I understand your concerns right now. They're the same as mine. But we have an emergency to deal with right now. We can't even say for sure that you'll be able to find them with your method, which means we could be losing valuable time to get information from direct witnesses. And we didn't get a chance to perfect the teleportation yet.
I know, but I'm confident I can...
We also aren't certain how searching will affect you, and we can't afford to have you already exhausted or in pain by the time we get to this scene if you don't succeed. We need to make sure you're available to look there as well. And finally, as much as I don't think you want to hear it, we have orders.
Yeah. I observe you're more than willing to ignore orders when it suits you.
Sometimes, yes. But I also know when to listen to my boss.
You mean when he happens to be in the next room?
That is a contributing factor, yes.
I just feel like there's a better use of my abilities than trying to pick up some psychometric threads at yet another crime scene.
I know it feels like that, Morgan, but you can always try your strategy afterwards. For now, we have a situation to manage, and we need your help. One part of this job is being able to adapt to sudden changes in the plan even if you don't like them.
I'll wait until we get to the scene and see what's visible from there, but I'm concerned the kids will flee the city or go somewhere I can't find them. I don't want to lose the window of opportunity and see every effort to make a difference to be wasted, that's all. Not just for my sake. For theirs, for the victims, for you.
I never thought you were trying to look out only for yourself, but I have somewhat noticed you just don't like it when plans change. So I appreciate your flexibility on this one.
Well, I try. even if it makes me cranky. And very, very worried.
Come on, Winter's waiting.
I wonder who we'll run into from Endgame here. When we reached the scene of the incident a short time later, there was less chaos than I expected. The damage, of course, was everywhere. To buildings, streets? Come on, mouth. Cooperate with me. What is wrong with you today? Streets, cars, bins. And emergency workers were still triaging a few people with minor injuries. But there were fewer people than I expected. Reuben and Winter were busy with all that right away, leaving me to my own devices on the footpath. For a while, I just stood there, taking it in. There were plenty of psychometric threads, a confused jumble of them that made it impossible to tell where some began and others ended. I wasn't even sure how to begin sorting through all that. Surely there were years of everyday echoes in that mess. If I let myself latch onto some of the fainter threads, that was the impression I got anyway. The brightest ones were where I should be looking, but, well, there was a reason some suggested letting a scene settle before allowing a psychometrist in. Even so, I moved into the street, blocked off from traffic on either end, and focused on a tangle of threads near an overturned vehicle. I took a breath and dove straight in. This time I was expecting the flood of information. There was no painful jumble of visuals. Rather, it was like watching snippets of a movie play out. They were disconnected, but not difficult to parse together. And the other information I received, the panicked onlookers, the irrelevant echoes from days or months of constant traffic through this place, I could ignore those for the most part. I stood in one place watching the information long enough that Reuben disentangled himself from what he was doing and joined me. I haven't seen you in that coat in ages.
Is everything okay? Are you seeing something?
Yes, nothing particularly useful. Our trio was here. We already knew that. They clashed with another group of Espers, an unexpected encounter that began in an alley nearby. Both groups fled. One of our trio, the knight, I think, was injured. I can't tell where they went, not just from the echoes here. And I can't tell you who they were up against. There wasn't exactly an introduction, just glimpses of faces.
But you might if you try your other strategy.
I don't see another way to find them, Reuben. When someone teleports, the psychometric threads just cut off, and I can't follow them anymore. I don't know how else to track them down.
Alright. It's not like any of the witnesses saw where they went either.
He caught Winter's eye from where we were standing and indicated we were going to move into a little alley nearby.
Are you certain you can do this without any accidental teleportation? We didn't get very far with practicing that.
I am confident.
I am allowing this only because I'm well aware you have a lot riding on this. Please, please be careful, Morgan.
I'll be fine. I promise. I wasn't certain I would be, but I just had to be, I suppose. I let out a slow breath and shut my eyes before expanding my sphere as far as I dared. The initial influx of information was overwhelming, as expected. But using what I'd learned while practicing earlier, I was able to block out everything but the glow of psi signatures, painting my view as a sea of green. There were a few spots of gold and a lone flash of red amongst the green. Then... there! I think I see them. A trio of non-green psi. Ah, over there, eh? I focused in on them, only loosely caging in where they were so I could let other information bleed in. They're in a warehouse, I think. An abandoned place. One of them is injured, like I thought. Where are they? I pulled back a little further. I felt the flicker of awareness as the king rank noticed me and immediately released my sphere, snapping back into my actual location.
What happened?
The king noticed me. They might try to flee, but I'm not sure they can with their night hurt.
Can you identify the location?
I think so. Reuben called Winter over while I tried to match the mental image to a map of the city and started searching for the place I'd seen. I was silent for several minutes. Alright, I think I may have found it. I'll send you the location where I think it is.
Unfortunately, you're going to have to come with us this time. We'll need you there to confirm we're in the right place.
I understand.
Then, let's go.
We didn't go alone, and I was just tagging along behind them as Reuben spoke to several other teams, arranging for a rendezvous at the location. I just hoped it wasn't wasted effort, and that they didn't have the chance to flee before we reached them. It was anticlimactic. We drove to an area of the city a little run down and empty. Specialist team took over, making sure to contain the building and set up a psi dampening perimeter. I sat in the car for all of it and couldn't even see what they were doing, especially since I'd been told not to use psi. Everyone was expecting a violent confrontation if the group was still inside, but that didn't happen. What did happen was that they asked to talk to me and refused to speak to anyone else until it was allowed. I think that's fair. They've had, reasonable communication with you, and something about you seems trustworthy, so makes sense to me. Which was how I found myself inside the building where they'd been contained. Reuben warned me I might find the dampening effect disorienting since I'd never experienced one before, but I didn't notice a change. Maybe I was just too nervous or too distracted, or it doesn't work. The trio were seated on some old chairs. They weren't restrained, but each had a psi inhibitor on their wrist. The knight was getting their injuries treated, but they didn't look well. Reuben stayed at my side and walked me to them. Did they say why they wanted to talk?
No, but they knew you were the one that found them, as you expected. They didn't seem angry or confrontational, or I wouldn't be allowing this.
Hesitant but curious, I approached the three Espers, once again struck by how young they seemed. Reuben was right that they didn't seem angry at all, but I had no idea what to say to them. Fortunately, their king rank jumped right in.
Are you looking for us because you know what they did to us? We want to know how much you know. We want to know whose side you're on.
I hesitated, then crouched down in front of the one who spoke. We are aware of that, yes. Some of it. We're hoping you can fill in the gaps. That's why we've been looking for you.
Are you going to make them stop?
That's the plan, yes.
They took We have a friend of ours. We want to find her. My abilities are... I can't look on my own anymore. We've been trying, but I can't anymore. We didn't want to see anyone get hurt. None of them. We weren't trying to hurt any of them. Just get information.
I'm aware of that. If you cooperate with Utpal, and probably Endgame, I think we can help you find your friend. We know they're... I glanced around and lowered my voice a little. We know they're a part of something called Project Gemini, but we don't have a lot of information about it. They shared a look between the three of them, and the king spoke up again.
If I cooperate, will you let these two go?
Hey, that's not... Riles.
Leon, stop. I'm the one they'll want most.
Because you're the king rank? Riley, no! Riles is such a cute name. I don't have the ability to make any promises about what happens next. But I think you'll find a lot of people are sympathetic to what you've gone through, including some who have more ability to make those kinds of promises.
They said we're going to be taken to Endgame.
That's also my understanding. I know Magnus Ulrich, and I believe he very much wants to put a stop to this research as well. Endgame might also be able to help with your condition? She looked at me again with those fate-affected eyes. Then her gaze slid away and she gave a non-committal shrug.
I don't care about that. I never wanted this to begin with.
I could probably never understand everything they'd been through, but that part anyway, that part I understood well. I'm Morgan, by the way. We were never able to find all your names.
I'm... Riley. Gregor.
Leon. Elisha.
I'm going to do what I can to keep helping you. I hope you believe me on that at least. The things you've been through. I want to make sure they never happen to anyone else. that much I can promise is true. I had so many things I wanted to ask. Their friend's name, the identities of the people they were fighting with, who they'd been trying to find when the fight happened. But none of that was my job, was it? I wasn't an interrogator or even a real investigator. My part was finished now. It felt so empty, somehow. I don't know that we'll get to talk again soon. And after this, a lot of people are going to be asking you a lot of questions. Do your best to answer, okay? I got a half nod as a response. And we didn't get a chance to talk more. Several agents came over and said it was time to get the kids to a temporary holding facility for Endgame. I just stood there and watched while they were led away. Riley looked back once before vanishing outside.
You okay?
Yeah. It's just... I don't know. I shrugged, unable to put it into words. What happens now?
Well, we have a hell of a lot of paperwork. The kids are going to be held overnight, I think. Endgame sent a cleanup crew earlier, but they weren't planning on taking anyone into custody. Looks like Endgame is dealing with something big on their end, God knows what, and asked to send a special team to pick them up tomorrow.
Endgame is dealing with something big on their end. Wonder which of those plot threads is happening. Do they actually have something going on, or is Magnus trying to buy us more time again?
Not sure. But since we have the time, we'll get statements from the kids regarding today's incident and the Emerson situation. And everything else. And I think it's wise to hand it to Endgame after that. Fits with the narrative we'll want to present publicly and, well, they can handle the bigger implications better than we can, and follow this through to its natural conclusion in a way that would be difficult for us. We are, after all, a triad organization.
Yeah.
Looks like we'll be heading back to the office now. We have an unfortunate amount of work ahead of us.
Fun.
Unless you want to do some searching for the remaining Espers on the loose.
I didn't actually see anyone else when I was looking for these three. The others may have already fled the city.
Well, it might be best to leave it to Endgame anyway. Looks like we're done here.
Phil gave a public statement about the incident that we watched live from Reuben's desk. He only released a few scattered details about the case, and it felt like too brief a statement for the enormity of the truth behind it, and how much work was left to do. Riley and the others weren't being punished, but they were being held in custody for the time being. And despite my assurances to them, I wasn't certain what would happen to them now. They were in a cell waiting to be picked up, and I was free. It felt unfair somehow. I was supposed to be writing up a report on my psychometric experiences, but instead found myself writing a note to Magnus, asking him to keep me updated, telling him how I thought the kids shouldn't face consequences. Somehow desperately seeking reassurance from him that this was going to end well. I didn't send it. Not yet. It was a garbled mess, and I needed time to collect my thoughts and clean it up. I sat for an hour staring at a blank report I was supposed to be writing, except I kept going back to the message to edit and tweak it and add more thoughts. I was keyed up and struggling to focus, and I didn't know why. Until Reuben finally suggested we go home. I agreed only because it was obvious staying was useless anyway. The hollow feeling of incompleteness followed me right out the door, though, and I could only hope it would fade by the time we got home.